Smasher and Lava Mortar are the arguably most used towers in geometry defense. One of them can be even considered the face of geometry defense, but they do differ. The Lava Mortar, for example, is a high-range splash attacking tower, while on the other hand, the Smasher is a low-range, high DPS tower. And in today's video, we're going to do a bunch of stuff to find out which is better. I would usually say my regular statement of DPS, math, stuff, and etc. But that's just a bunch of nerd crap, and half of you guys don't understand that. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a bunch of nerd calculations to find out which is actually better, the Lava Mortar or Smasher. Let's start off with the Smasher. Its placement cost is 2,800. It starts off with a damage of 28, a range of 6, a fire rate of 0.8, and a DPS of 35. Continuing on to level 2, the damage is increased to 45 and now has a range of 7. Its fire rate is still the same and the DPS is now 56.25, and also this upgrade costs 3,350. At level 3, Smasher receives some huge buffs to everything, having an increased damage to 80, an increased range to 8, a decrease in fire rate of 0.7. This upgrade does cost a lot at 7,400, but the DPS you get is really great, having a DPS of 114.3. Level 4 is interesting. You get a huge increase of damage, having a damage of 280, a 200 damage increase, the same range, but the fire rate does increase this from 0.7 to 0.8. But with that, you get an insane DPS of 350. And finally, at level 5, you get some huge increases to all the stats, having a range of 10, a damage of 575. The fire rate is still the same. This upgrade does cost a lot though, but the DPS you get for that is 718.8, which is absolutely insane. One of the highest DPSs in the game. Smasher is definitely a great tower. As we've seen before, it has high DPS, low range, but it's still relatively good. So, how does the Smasher compare to the Lava Mortar stats? At level 1, the Lava Mortar is quite expensive to place, having a placement cost of 5,400. But with this, you get a damage of 200, an insane range of 20, a cooldown of 7.5, but with that, you get a DPS of 5.3. To note something, that Lava Mortar can hit a maximum of 2 enemies no matter the level. So for its DPS, I'm just going to be multiplying it by 2 because that's usually what you're going to get. Continuing on to level 2, the damage is increased to 350, the range is increased to 23, the fire rate decreases to 7, and it now has a DPS of 100. At level 3, the mortar goes neon or something, and it's fully red now. But at level 3, the damage is almost doubled to 600, the range is increased to 25, the cooldown also decreases to 6.5. This upgrade does cost a lot though, but you get 184 DPS. In my opinion, this is like the biggest ripoff in the game. You're paying like triple the cost for like 84 more DPS. That is just not worth it, in my opinion. At level 4, the damage is increased to 1000, the range is increased to 27, the cooldown is decreased to 5.5. This upgrade does cost a lot more than the max Smasher, and the DPS you get is 363.6. And finally, at level 5, it has 3 barrels now, so technically we have to multiply its actual damage by 3 because each barrel does 1,000 damage, or 1,100, giving us a damage of 3,300, and the range is also increased to 30. The cooldown is decreased to 5. This upgrade this is the most expensive tower in the game, and with that, with the like 3,300, the DPS you get is 1,320. The Lava Mortar by far has way more DPS, so does this mean the Lava Mortar wins? Well, there's a few things to consider. Firstly, placement limit. Both are server-side towers, meaning no matter how many players have this tower, you can only place a certain amount in each server. So you can place 12 Smashers, giving you a DPS of 8,625, while on the other hand, you can only place 5 Lava Mortars, and even with splash damage, the maximum DPS you can get with 5 Mortars and splash is only 6,600. Something I don't like to bring up in these types of videos are the charms, because it just gets really complicated, but for this segment I will. The charms have a small percentage of what it can give. And the Lava Mortar is so big that those small percentages don't really stack up for the Lava Mortar. The Lava Mortar's damage cannot be affected by charms, I believe, and the range isn't really that much of a problem, and also fire rate barely increases DPS. While on the other hand, the Smasher can take full advantage of the buffs, gaining more range, meaning more damage can be given, meaning more DPS per second, and even the damage gets increased. Using the best charms in the game, on average, you get like 100 more damage on the Smasher. And I'm testing this off of Star Charm and Neon and Geo, and I got like 675, which is a 100 damage increase. While the Lava Motor barely changes in DPS, only gaining like 36, I believe. So yeah, I mean, it's not that great, but in general, the charms barely affect the Lava Motor, while the Smasher, on the other hand, can take full advantage of these buffs. But with every buff, there's also a debuff, quite literally. Because the Mortar is barely affected by small percentages and changes of the range and fire rate, in modes like Xeno and Neon mode, the Smasher will be more affected by those range debuffs, fire rate debuffs, and etc. So that is something to consider. And usually it's a melee tower, the Smasher will be placed close to the path, meaning Toxics and also Mega Turrets in Insane and Normal mode can actually spam stun the Smasher. And also in certain events, there's certain bosses that can kill your towers, so the closer the tower, the more likely it is to get deleted. Even with those cons to the Smasher, I still would give it to the Smasher as the better tower, because it could be used in the mid-game to late-game, while Mortar is really just exclusively a late-game tower. It's just way too expensive, and even if you wanted to use it in the mid-game, it's kind of useless and way slower than the Smasher, because Lava Mortar has a lot of damage, but it has a slow fire rate no matter what charm set you're using, so it kind of just be overkilling in the mid-game. While the Smasher is always useful, and if you somehow get it in the early game, I bet it would be the best early game tower in the game. But yeah, I would give it to the Smasher as the better tower. And I wouldn't call it a draw like the Laser Sniper video. I think just Smasher is overall better. And this might be a little controversial, but I really think Lava Motor is a sub DPS. I'm just saying, like, I don't find myself using Lava Motor until I max out on my previous towers. Even Laser Sniper, I feel like just Lava Motor takes a while to upgrade and is just way slower than something like the Smasher, Laser Sniper, etc. it would be. But anyways, thanks for watching. Comment for algorithm. I don't really care about liking and subscribing. Just comment for algorithm. Thanks. Goodbye.